On behalf of everyone here, John, can I just say, may I welcome ex-miner John Dunn. And the strike of 84, 85 was an incredible fight in terms of the miners, the women and the families, and everybody involved. For those who were alive then, and some people here weren't, for those of us who were alive, it was humbling, John, I'll be honest. It remains and it never leaves us. So it's an honour to hear you, John, for you, and your time is much appreciated. And this TUC, small though it is, wanted to extend a hand of friendship to you and solidarity in terms of the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign. We'll hope you'll explain the basics of the strike and what occurred at Orgreave, and I hope you don't mind taking questions at the end. Less than me, and over to you.
Well, thanks for those kind words and for the invite. It's been support like this from good trade unionists and rank and file members of what was once the Labour Party that's kept us going for 38 long years, and for that, you know, we can't thank people enough. It's been a long, lonely, hard struggle at times, you know, and you know, we've seen our communities absolutely destroyed and become abandoned wastelands, and the fact that people still want to hear about that is, as I say, what keeps us going. Now, I'm going to assume there's at least some knowledge about the background of the strike, because, to be honest, I could go on for hours and hours, and very often have done, about the intricacies, the backroom manoeuvrings of the Tories and the Coal Board. But I'll just start with this. It's been I don't know what sort of weather you've got, but it's been a lovely warm day up here. We've just gone past, we had our annual rally that the TUC did the best to cock up on Saturday, but that's not the first time they've abandoned us, so we're quite used to that. A great rally, great comrades, and it's the first time we've been back on streets since 2019, since pre-COVID. So, as I say, it's been a warm day today, been a lovely day, and it was on June the 18th, 1984. So I'd like, especially for comrades, as you said, there'd be some people who weren't even alive at that time, and I actually hate it when I hear that. It makes me feel so old, which I am. But let's a little bit of imagination, a bit of a thought experiment, if you like. Just imagine June the 18th, 84. It's a day like today. You've been on strike a few months, and you're at a loose end, and you don't know what to do, and you suddenly get the idea that you're going to put on your best pair of shorts, a nice cool t-shirt, and a pair of trainers, and you're going to travel to South Yorkshire to attack some heavily armed riot police. Now, that was the narrative. That's what the BBC put out when famously they reversed that footage on their 6 o'clock news. And imagine that, to your surprise, there aren't any police roadblocks. From the start of the strike, we'd not been able to go anywhere. There was a ring of blue steel around our communities. All roads were sealed off. You were stopped, asked who you were, where you were going, and if you even looked like a miner, you were turned around under threat of arrest and told to go home. So just imagine on that June the 18th, you find not only are there no roadblocks around Orgreave, but the police are actually showing you where to park, and letting you in without any problem. And when you get there, surprise, surprise, you find that you've dropped there on a day when 6,000 coppers decide to go and enjoy a day out, an away day in the sun. And, they're exercising the horses, they've taken the dogs for a walk, and as I say, surprise, surprise, they happen to be there to greet you. And didn't they greet our comrades? 95 of our comrades were arrested, charged with riot, which at that time carried a potential life sentence. Countless, hundreds were injured, some severely, denied medical treatment. It's only when the NUM's lawyer Gareth Peace turned up and insisted that they got medical assistance. Up to then, their wounds, their broken bones have been bandaged by fellow pickets, taking off those T-shirts that I previously mentioned. Now, our campaign was formed in 2012. We've not been going that long. We were 10 years. We've been a very, very successful campaign. And we were formed after a documentary that was unfortunately only shown in the north by the BBC, that actually exposed what had happened with police statements that day. That most of those 95 arrest statements were identical. They had the same phrases, that Mr. So-and-so was seen throwing stones, etc., etc. And it's been put on record by certain officers who were there that day that they were taken, arresting officers were taken into a porter cabin, and these arrest documents were actually dictated to them by a man who nobody knew in a suit. Now, we were formed after that exposure. We knew all along that it had been a police frame-up and that the police had hatched plans. Their whole idea on that day was to give us such a beating that the strike collapsed. And to every picket's credit, it didn't. It actually strengthened resolve. Now, we've picked Orgreave because it's the most visible thing of that strike. As I say, it was covered wrongly. The BBC claimed they'd reversed the footage that seemingly showed these miners in T-shirts attacking these riot police. And they then said that, it was accidentally reversed because what took place, they didn't say this, was an actual police riot. They were allowed to let loose, and if they'd been carrying guns, as many of them do today, some of our comrades, I am sure, would not be here to even speak about what happened. So that was the most visible. It was covered on every news bulletin, distorted by the BBC, who some years later, over 10 years later, made a half-hearted apology saying, in the heat of the moment, trying to get it out in time for the news, it was spliced together wrongly. Now, I'm sure it weren't some, as we had in those days, YTS trainee that was editing major news bulletins, but that was their story, and they stick to that today. Now, as I say, that was the most visible, but it happened every day in our communities. There were mini police riots in every mining village. And we've since found out, with the release of Thatcher's cabinet papers, that she wrote in her own handwriting in the margins of those cabinet papers, instructing the police to get tough with pickets and the courts to process Pickett's convictions more quickly. And as I say, myself, I was severely injured many months before Orgreave, just a few weeks into the strike, when a copper, after a picket had broken away at Cresswell Colliery, April the 9th, a copper took a shine to the back of my head and smashed it in with his truncheon. And because of Thatcher's urging the courts to speed everything up, people like me weren't tried by local magistrates, because some of them belonged to what was a little bit better Labour Party than what you've got today and could have been sympathetic. So they bought retired judges out of retirement, called them stipendiary magistrates, and so we had no jury trials, no magistrates trials, just appearing before a single judge, and we're all given prohibitive bail conditions that prevented us going anywhere near not just a picket line, but any National Coal Board property. And we even had pickets arrested miles and miles from collieries just for trying to get on a motorway, and actually jailed for breaking these bail conditions. As I say, even though they were nowhere near a mine or anything. I was charged with threatening behaviour, for threatening that police truncheon with the back of my head. And when I appeared in court many months later, I got a second charge of watching and besetting. That's an act that predates trade unionism, and it literally means looking. So the irony is that I got seriously injured, severe concussion, for threatening a police truncheon with the back of my head, and also for looking at it. Now, I know in Labour movement, with things as they are with Tory governments, we need eyes in the back of our heads, but I thought that were carrying it to ridiculous extremes. I carry those two convictions to this day. 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, I was denied a visa to visit friends and my partner's relatives in America because of those convictions. And the funny thing is that when I sent a freedom of information request into Derbyshire Constabulary for details of that arrest, because I've been trying for 38 years to clear my name, it came back that they had no record of my arrest, no record whatsoever. They even sent me my tenner back that I had to send them. And many of our comrades who've sent in freedom of information requests have had the same thing. There's no record of it. Now, in our strike, 12,000 pickets were arrested. That's more people than the population of the town I come from in Derbyshire, Claycross. 7,000 were badly injured and 200 were sacked. And yet there's no record of those 12,000 arrests. And to make matters worse, the government have now locked away key papers about the strike till 2066. Now, can I ask all the people, as you said, who weren't born at the time of the strike, to, if you're still around in 2066, take a look at those papers and see if you can try to get my name retrospectively cleared, because if I do live that long, I'll be 114 years old. So that's how much the state is prepared to cover up what they were doing to smash my union. Now, the 95 who were arrested and charged with riot that I mentioned at Orgreave, their trial over a year later, imagine that, the cruelty of that. You've gone for a whole year not knowing that if you appear, whether you appear in court, whether you will come home and see your family ever again, whether you're able to be walking to your own home, because you could be sent down for life. Imagine the mental anguish of that. But that trial, luckily, because of our sharp-eyed lawyers, collapsed because they saw all these statements that were identical, because they found out that some of the arresting officers weren't even the officers who'd arrested. So they were cleared, and a handful of them got some compensation without prejudice from South Yorkshire Police. And one of our comrades in the campaign, Kevin Horn, has asked for his arrest documents there, and it came back so redacted that all you could see, quite literally, was the date of his arrest and his name. They wouldn't even give him any details. So they're still desperate to cover up why they went to the lengths that they did. And I think it's important that in meetings like this, in rallies, in all sorts of places where we're invited to speak, that these issues are raised, because they're very, very relevant today. When we've got a spy cops inquiry, of which the NUM is a key participant, because MI5 had an agent at the very top of our union. We've got women who are actually raped by the state, that they went to such lengths as that. So it's important that we know that the state, and the police in particular, isn't this sort of useful thing that keeps us safe, that protects us from this, and policemen are the ones who keep us safe in our houses. When the government needs them, they'll be used. After us, they went for the printers. There's the Battle of the Beanfield when they went to New Age travellers. So we are just part of a big, big picture. And we said at the time that we were fighting not just for our jobs. We weren't fighting for a wage increase or anything like that. We just wanted the right to work. Something the establishment tells us is the only way out of poverty, and the only way to advance in life. That's all we wanted. And for that, we were smashed to pieces, we were hospitalized, we were framed, we were jailed, and never ever forget, 2 of our comrades were actually murdered on the picket line, for which there's never been an inquiry, never been an arrest or everything. But as I say, we said we're not fighting just for ourselves and our communities, we're fighting for future generations. And that hasn't come true now? With young people today on 0 hours contracts, with poverty wages, with more food banks in this country than there are outlets of McDonald's. And as I say, our communities that we were defending are now wasteland. No shops, buses hardly run of an evening, and you know, there's nothing. The mine, good, well-paid jobs have been replaced by drugs. That's the scourge of our community now. But what's also important is to remember that despite all Thatcher and her government's micromanaging, despite the role of the police and the state in attacking us, in framing us, we came so close. Had the deputies, with an 82% mandate for strike, not abandoned mysteriously their strike in October that year, we would have won in a matter of days. And records show that coal stocks were so low that if the strike had lasted another 3 weeks or a month, we would have won. But unfortunately, quite literally, many of our members were literally starved back to work. The government had denied our families proper social security. They deemed that every striker was getting paid by the union, and so, you know, your families, your wives, your partners were penalised as well as you. And many of those miners' wives, the brave miners' wives who kept us going for so long, they didn't just keep us going by feeding us, by working in soup. They joined us on picket lines, and we should remember the role of women in our communities for doing that and standing by us and showing that it wasn't just miners who were fighting, it was our communities that were part of a fight back. So as I say, it's important that we discuss these issues. It's important now in the world that we've got, where the government are now prepared to take on the RMT, where, like us, they've been abandoned by the Labour Party, and I've heard very, very little from the TUC other than get round the table, etc., etc. It's important now that these lessons are discussed. And the positives, everybody talks about, oh, the miners were defeated. The strike was defeated, but we're still here. We're still fighting. You know, the fact that after 38 long, lonely years, our campaign has 10,000s of supporters, that we address meetings all over the country, that at one time we actually made it into the Labour Party manifesto. I'm not sure how long that will last under Sir Starmer and Company at the moment. But as I say, and I often say this when I'm speaking live at a rally, you know, I've got some good news for people. Thatcher's dead and we're still here. And the fact that even some relatively small meetings like this can take place is a testimony to how Thatcher didn't achieve her aims. Her aim was to smash the entire trade union and labour movement, to have a sort of elected dictatorship where people couldn't meet, where trade unions were so hamstrung they couldn't be effective. And the fact that we're meeting, that our rally took place, that tens of thousands of people, I understood, attended the TUC's, what I call a counter demonstration, proves that the fighting spirit of the working class is still there. And I've had many, many low moments in these 38 years. You know, I've gone through, I was got rid of by the coal board in 1990. As I say, I've still got 2 police convictions that hamper many things I want to do to this very day. But I do feel I've been very, very lucky, because I saw something in 84, 85 that still gives me hope to this day. That I saw the possibility of what could be achieved. When I saw, you know, young unarmed men standing up to heavily armed riot police, when I saw communities prepared to defend themselves against police occupation, I think I was so lucky to be part of that, and I would do it again at a minute's notice. In fact, had the strike not collapsed, I would still be on strike today. But I also think I've been lucky in recent times. For all the faults of the Corbyn movement, we saw again that there was a possibility of hope. And I think without hope, the movement can't progress. You know, we've had our chins on our chests too long, and now's the time to start looking, you know, towards those horizons that we want to conquer. And so, as I say, I've been lucky, and today I see the emergence of the Labour movement after all those years, after 84, 85, when trade union leaders just rolled over one after another, refused to lead their memberships, thought that all they had to do was sell insurance and give their members a diary. Those days are now changing. As I say, we've got the magnificent RMT strike taking place. We're seeing, I took part actually in a YouGov poll, and the vast majority of people support that strike, despite what the media are telling us. Something like 61–62% are supporting the strike. But I also think that one of the key things that's emerged has been the election of Sharon Graham as leader of Unite. I campaigned for Sharon. I got lots of stick off with Steve Turner. You're splitting the vote, you're doing this. But I always thought that she epitomised what the trade union movement is about, giving it back its fighting spirit, using new techniques through the leverage unit that she'd set on. We've seen other unions. We've seen the Bakers Union who started the campaign for a £15 an hour minimum wage. They've now broken from the Labour Party and are going into community organisation. I think once again, hope is now back on our agenda. And to quote Sharon Graham, no MP is going to come to our rescue. The failure of the Corbyn project proved that parliamentary democracy is not real. It's a myth. And that what we have to do is transform our movement into a fighting movement that doesn't just fight for better wages, for better conditions, and they're absolutely necessary with fuel prices, which aren't just as a result of wars, etc. Coal can be burnt cleanly, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Fuel can be made, petrol, the Spitfires that won the Battle of Britain flew on a spirit distilled from coal. So we've got 1,000 years at least of an indigenous energy source. And because that has been destroyed, we now have fuel shortages. We still import millions and millions of tons of dirty coal from Russia, from places like Colombia, where it's mined by 10-year-old kids. It could have been so different. And I think had we won, we'd see a different society today. But that's the sort of society we have to fight for. As I say, we're not just fighting to defend our rights. I think we actually should be fighting for revenge on what's happened to our people, especially during this decade of austerity, of what's happened to our communities, of how people are being forced to use food banks, people are being forced to do 3 jobs. And I think we have to fight for revenge against that. And the best revenge, and I'll finish on this, comrades, is to abolish this rotten system and replace it where people come first, where people matter, It's not about profit. And comrades, as we know, that's called socialism. Thank you.